All right. So our group is presenting on AB 766, which is the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access Strategic Plans. I'm Keith.
I'm Monique.
I'm Vanessa.
Perfect. Um, so why do we want the bill AB 766? So for some historical context, AB 766 responds to persistent racial disparities in housing, healthcare, education, and the criminal justice system. Government policies are often reinforce inequities due to the lack of systemic racial impact analysis. And then also due to some recent backlash against DEI initiatives in some states, it's really threatened the progress of the advancement of DEI to make sure that marginalized and oppressed communities are included. The key issues addressed by AB 766 are the lack of standardized racial equity assessments that occur in policymaking. Right now, it doesn't happen. And it addresses the need for transparency and accountability in government decision making. It also ensures equitable resource allocation for marginalized communities. And what is AB 766? So AB 766 is a California bill focused on diversity, equity, inclusion in state agencies and departments. It mandates that all agencies under the government's authority must integrate racial equity analysis into their strategic plan, budgeting, and regulatory process. The bill aims to embed racial equity into government operations, ensuring that state policies do not perpetuate systemic disparities. By requiring agencies to analyze the racial impact of their decisions, the bill seeks to create more inclusive and equitable policymaking. The bill tackles three key issues basically, which is agencies must update their strategic plans to incorporate data analysis and inclusive practices that address racial disparities. Before implementing any budget or regulation, agencies must conduct a racial equity review to assess potential impacts on marginalized communities. Agencies must also actively consult with historically disadvantaged communities to ensure that their policies are reflective of the community's needs. And all of this is going to be done by a designated diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, which will oversee the racial equity analysis process. So does AB 766 address the problem? And in a nutshell, yes, it does. And it does so by embedding racial equity into the decision-making process. It helps departments proactively identify and prevent racial disparities before they are built into policies. And it preserves DEI roles and programs at the state government level by requiring continuous strategic review of policies for equity impact. And it also ensures that state programs remain inclusive and accountable, advancing long-term solutions to systemic inequity in California.
And I'll go ahead and be talking about legislative strategies. So these are some legislative strategies for lobbying and support of a bill in California focused on advancing DEI. So our goal as advocates is not only to support the bill, but to do so in a way that is strategic and persuasive and organized. So the first thing would be district matching. So this means that we try to group the advocates based on their legislative district, so that each meeting with the legislator includes their own constituents. For my group, there was one constituent, and they were actually our lead for lobby days. So that was good. And why is this important? Because usually lawmakers are much more responsive to people who live or work in their district. So, if it's possible, it is recommended to have constituents directly speak to their legislator because they're more likely to be persuaded by somebody who works or lives in their area. The second would be role assignment. So these are some of the type of roles that you could have during lobby days. They don't have to be specifically like this. Or and sometimes there's going to be one person or two people who have multiple roles, as opposed to just one role. So ensure that each team member knows their role and is prepared to communicate effectively with the legislator. Assigning specific roles can help streamline the conversation and make the meeting more organized and impactful. So one role is the lead speaker. They open the meeting, introduce the group, and explain the purpose of the meeting. The lead speaker should set the tone and make a positive first impression. So that was our leader, who was the lead speaker, who introduced us. And also there was another person who introduced the NASW Association. So that can be one as well. Storyteller, so share personal or compelling story related to the issue at hand, DEI. A well-told, relatable story can humanize a policy issue and make it resonate on an emotional level with the legislator. So for our group, there was at least one person for each bill because we were presenting on 3 bills. So there was at least one person for each bill who was giving a personal story to be able to connect with the bill and the legislator. Also, another role, policy expert. Another role would be policy expert. So they would present the details of AB 76, explaining what it aims to do and why it's important. They should also be prepared to answer factual questions about the bill. So for our group at Lobby Days, since most of us were first timers, at Lobby Days, our lead speaker was actually our policy expert as well. So if the legislator had a question regarding the bill and the person may have not known the answer, then our lead speaker would take the lead and answer. And then there was times where even the lead did not know the answer to the question. So if that happens, I would say don't feel like you need to have an answer in the minute, because one thing that I noticed that our lead speaker did was that she actually said, you know what, I actually am not too sure about that. Is it okay if I, do some research and I send you the information later tonight or later, this week? And, the legislator, they seemed okay with that. So that's also an option for you if, there is a question that you cannot answer. And then the asker, so make the direct ask, which is crucial. The asker should clearly ask, will you support and vote yes on AB 766? So everybody who was presenting on a bill at the end was asking the legislator directly if they supported the bill or not. So like I said, you can have multiple roles within Lobby Days. Doesn't have to be specific to one type of role. Can we go ahead and move to the next slide? Issue a briefing to ensure that every participant is prepared and aligned with the message. Provide them with the following materials. So for our group personally, we prepared and had a quick briefing via Zoom before our appointment, just so that we all were in the same, within the same, oh my gosh, why am I blinking right now? To make sure that we were all on the same page. So that's something that we did. So briefing before your actual appointment. And then also our lead speaker provided a fact sheet of the bill. So a 1-page document summarizing the bill, its goal and its potential to impact. This document should provide enough context to help the advocate discuss AB 76 confidently. So this fact sheet was provided to us, but also to the legislator. Key talking points, a list of core talking points to ensure that everyone is aligned with the key arguments. This helps prevent confusion and ensures a cohesive message during the meeting. A summary of potential legislators' concerns and objections. So prepare for potential pushback by identifying common objections or concerns that legislators might raise. This allows advocates to be prepared with responses. And then lastly, the response guide. So to handle pushback, a guide with well-crafted responses to common objections. For example, I'm not sure this is a priority, and a response could be this bill directly addresses an urgent need for DEI in workplaces, which will ultimately contribute to a more inclusive and productive society. So just kind of having questions that you might anticipate could come up is a good idea. But again, like I mentioned before, if you do not have the answer, then and there, you can always ask the legislator, hey, you know what? I'm not too sure about that. Can I get back to you on that? And so those are just some of the legislative strategies for lobbying day.
And then next, I will be talking about the code of ethics that do apply to the AB 766. So one of the code of ethics, social justice. The NASW Code of Ethics emphasizes eliminating oppression and discrimination. AB 766 aligns with this by requiring racial equality analysis in state agencies to prevent policies that disproportionately harm marginalized communities. Another code of ethic is cultural competence, which mandates social workers to engage in culturally informed practices. AB 766 supports this by ensuring state agencies consult with historically disadvantaged communities before implementing the policies. And the other code of ethics, which also applies to AB 766, is advocacy and political action. So this encourages social workers to engage in policy advocacy to promote systematic change. AB 766 exemplifies this by embedding the DEI principles into government operations, making equity a legislative priority.
Okay, so I'll be covering how to prepare for lobby days when advocating for AB 766. Before the meeting, preparation starts with researching legislators. It's important to know who they are, their previous votes on equity-related bills, and any public stances they've taken. This helps us shape our message in a way that connects with them. Next, we develop clear messaging. Our talking points should be short, purposeful, and rooted in the NASW Code of Ethics, emphasizing social justice, cultural competence, and advocacy. This is also the time to prepare personal stories or real-world examples that can help humanize the importance of racial equity in policy. We also recommend doing role playing or mock meetings. Practicing as a group helps everyone stay in their roles and gives you a chance to prepare for difficult questions or interruptions. It's a confidence boost too. So now moving into day of lobbying strategies. First, confidence and professionalism go in a long way. Dress professionally, speak clearly, and introduce yourself with confidence. Remember, you're there as a representative of the community and the profession of social work. Second, stick to the key talking points. It's easy to go off track, especially if the conversation shifts, but it's important to stay focused. If a legislator disagrees or brings up a concern, acknowledge it briefly and then bring the conversation back to the benefits of AB 766. And then lastly, bring supporting materials. Leave behind a one-page fact sheet or a short letter from someone impacted by inequitable policies. These materials can reinforce your message and give legislators something concrete to review after the meeting. And then, hold on, let's see. And then, so even when we're fully prepared, we can still face some challenges during lobby visits. One common challenge is that legislators may be unfamiliar with the work we do as social workers or why racial equity matters in policy. In those cases, we want to use real-world examples, something that connects emotionally or economically. It helps them see the practical long-term benefits of bills like AB 766. Another challenge can come from opposition by special interest groups that feel DEI threatens their agenda. It's important to stay calm and counter that with evidence-based responses, highlighting how inclusive policies improve services, trust in government, and social outcomes. We also deal with time constraints. So some meetings may only last a few minutes or a legislator might be in a rush. So that's why it's helpful to have a clear message to get that point quickly and leave behind materials like fact sheets or impact statements. But the work doesn't end there, which brings me to post-lobbying follow-up. After your meeting, it's important to send a thank you email to the legislator or their staff. thank them for their time, briefly recap your main points, and offer to provide additional information if needed. Also, stay engaged, track the bill's progress, attend future hearings if you can, and mobilize community support through letters, emails, and social media. Continued advocacy keeps the pressure on and shows lawmakers that support for AB 76 is strong and sustained. Even small steps after lobby days helps turn a one-time conversation into a real lasting change.
So why hold a rally? To make everything public, to bring public visibility and awareness to the issue. A rally draws attention to the issue, making it harder for legislatures to ignore or shuffle under the rug. It creates media opportunities, increasing public engagement and pressure on policymakers, especially when it has to affect the public. And then demonstrating a collective power. A large turnout shows legislators that the issue has widespread support. It signals that constituents are organized, passionate, and ready to hold officials accountable. Energizing advocates and stakeholders. Rallies motivate participants, reinforcing their commitment to the cause. They provide a platform for impacted communities to share their stories and experiences. It influences legislative decisions. Lawmakers are more likely to prioritize issues that have strong public backing. A well-organized rally can shift political momentum in favor of proposed legislation. Also, connecting advocacy to social justice. Rallies amplify marginalized voices, ensuring their concerns are heard. They reinforce the NASW Code of Ethics, which emphasizes social justice and systematic change. So what happens at a lobby day rally? There's opening speeches and calls to action. Social work leaders, activists, and legislatures address the crowd, explaining the purpose of the rally. And personal stories from impacted individuals highlight the urgency of the issue. There will be a march or demonstration. We actually marched to the Capitol and held the rally with signs, banners, chants to amplify the message to the public and the media. They were also live streaming the entire rally to broadcast it to the people who aren't there, and which also helps community mobilize and have the next step. So organizers encourage attendees to continue the advocacy efforts beyond the rally. And then they do their calls to action, which includes letter writing, campaigns, petitions, and future lobbying. So this video will show how big the rally was when we marched to the Capitol.
Power to talk about vulnerable communities and to remain inspired and uplifted, because the struggle be real. It be really, really real. And if you can make it in South Side, you can make it anywhere. So I'm just really humbled for her to bless us with her grace and her presence. Power to talk.
Now, this next video is the call to action.
When you change you, when you free you from the trauma that is within you, you begin to reconcile with who you really are, and the veil of the supremacy disappears by far. That's the gift. When you recognize that you've been programmed to think the way they want you to, you begin to think a little bit differently. All these bias, all these racist terms, these horrible education systems, all of these businesses that flourish off the backs of others eventually have to collapse on themselves, because capitalism was never made to last. We are in a season of transformation, and the veil is being lifted. And for the first time, social workers are becoming activists in a new way. And it looks like the laws y'all getting passed today. So how you move and the stories you tell And the way that you heal others, you take them out of their own hell, will only be a reflection of the work you do on you to stop allowing your trauma and your doubt to defeat you. Because only from that space can you really make changes in other people. Only from your healed space can you really make changes in your community, because we need a revolutionary healing that only social workers of healed capacity can do, which means caring about humanity enough to stand for something or fall for anything. And we don't have time for that. When you change.
So one of the things I learned from Lobby Days was it really inspired me to be able to want to do more. And it showed me that we can make a change just by talking to our legislators, and that legislators are regular people just like us, and not to be scared of them. So it has also inspired me to want to be on boards in my local community to be able to make more positive change for our community.
And I think for myself, what I learned from the Lobby Days experience was, I think the whole thing kind of deepened my understanding of macro social work, and it really reinforced how policy advocacy aligns with our ethical mandate through, NASW, to challenge systemic inequalities and advance social justice. And I really got a chance to see how social workers can bridge the gap between direct practice and structural change. So I thought it was an invaluable opportunity.
I really enjoyed participating in Lobby Days, even though I was thrown off a bit when our group had to talk to the legislator in the hallway instead of their office. It taught me that advocacy doesn't always go as planned, but it's still impactful. I definitely recommend Lobby Days to other social work students. It kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone and helped me see how we can be a voice for change.
And my experience at Lobby Days was a great experience. I think I was a little bit caught off guard because I did not really expect that I was going to talk to the legislator directly on my first time. So I would just say, don't expect not to talk, because everybody's most likely going to talk. Everybody's going to have a role to probably talk. But I think that I learned that Lobby Days are very strategic, they're very organized. You come in with a game plan of what you're going to talk about already, how you're going to address challenges that come up. So the strategicness, and that's it.